Hello, ladies. Hello. Happy Monday. Come on in and say hello, whether you are live or on the replay. I love to know who is receiving and watching the magic and the wisdom that I share on here. And today's video is going to be all about healing the father wound, which is that childlike part of you that might still be a little wounded and still seeking your dad's love and his validation and his approval. So having a father wound doesn't necessarily mean that he was absent. Sometimes your dad could have been in your life, but yet mentally or emotionally there was something going on with him that made him a little bit distant. Or maybe he had behavior that affected the way that you felt towards him. So father wounds can happen in a variety of ways, whether you had divorced parents, maybe if you were adopted, maybe if your dad was away working a lot. If he died when you were really young, maybe he had chronic health issues and he was always sick. Maybe he was verbally or emotionally or physically abusive with you. Maybe he had a very weak, passive kind of personality. So it can happen in a lot of different ways. And I know for me, I shared this before, my dad was physically there in my life, but yet mentally or emotionally, he wasn't there due to his addictions, when he was alive. So that definitely created a really deep void and wound within my own heart. I always felt very invisible to my own dad, where, I always had to deal with him stealing my money, letting me down, forgetting to pick me up from places, disregarding my boundaries all the time. And there was always this overwhelming feeling of me constantly waiting on him, waiting for him to show up for me, waiting for him to love me, waiting for his love, waiting for his direction, waiting for his clarity. And all of that just never came from him. And that really broke my heart for a long time until I learned how to heal that part of myself. But before I learned how to heal from that, it did create a really deep void and wound within me where I ended up projecting all of that baggage onto men, feeling like I couldn't trust any of them and feeling like none of them were really reliable or dependable for me. So the father wound can lead to a lot of unhealthy, destructive behavior because it does have you really hungry. It does have you in survival mode, really hungry for that validation. So it's going to have you feeling really unfulfilled and always searching for something outside of yourself, and that can often lead you to betraying your own boundaries, betraying your self-respect. So the big one that you usually see manifest from the father wound is the women who tend to be really attracted to unavailable or abusive men, because on that subconscious level, there is a part of you that does feel comfortable in this pattern and in these feelings of a man not really showing up for you and loving you. There's that part of you might feel like if it does wait around for this unavailable person, if one day it gets that love from this unavailable person, that part of you is going to feel like it's going to resolve that wound that might be there from childhood. The father wound can lead to unhealthy sexuality where it's more on the destructive side, where you might find yourself kind of selling yourself out or doing things that you don't really want to do, allowing your body to be violated by men because there's a part of you that's really hungry for that validation and doesn't want to lose this guy. The father wound leads to a lot of insecurity because your dad's strength and his grounding energy should have instilled in you the feeling of protection. So if that is missing, it is going to lead to you feeling really unsafe within your body and feeling too vulnerable and too exposed in the world. The father wound leads to a really deep fear of abandonment because the disconnect from your dad as a little girl is actually very traumatic, when you're a little kid. So that does lead to that can lead to intense anxiousness, becoming really needy, really clingy, very obsessive with men, because you're really afraid that you're going to lose them, or you're really afraid that they're going to leave you. Or you might become really controlling with men because, again, you're still really afraid that they're going to leave, and that part of you might feel like if you don't force yourself onto the man, if you don't force him to stay or force him to change, that you're going to lose that love from him. So you can see like this can manifest in a lot of different ways. It really does depend on you and your individual story. But overall, it just creates a really deep feeling of shame where you feel like there's something wrong with you. You feel like you're unloved and that there's something missing. So do let me know if you can relate to this down below. Let me know, how does your father wound show up in your life? What kind of patterns do you see playing out in your life that you think is related to the relationship that you had with your dad? And if you do want to take this deeper, this is the work that we're going to be doing within the 8-week group coaching program, the Erotic Luxury Temple. because healing this is actually very extensive. There's a lot of layers to it that you do have to kind of go through and heal. So there's only so much that I can squeeze onto a Facebook post or onto a live stream. So the group coaching is a perfect way to really show up for this wounded part of yourself. And my personal process for healing is all about getting to those root memories, all of that programming that might be within you, extracting all of those belief systems and those false narratives that might be there, learning how to rewire your inner story so you can feel better about yourself, and then really learning how to show up for yourself a lot better. And all of that is going to help you rebuild your sovereignty and your strength as a woman. But I will give you some beginner wisdom that you can journal or reflect on, and that's to ask yourself, what kind of patterns did you personally play out with your dad as a little girl, and how do you still see yourself playing that out with men now as an adult? So for example, for me, I became very withdrawn from my dad, when I saw him repeatedly let me down over the years. So I was the same way with men for a long time, not letting them support me, not really getting too close, being really guarded with them, having a lot of doubts, being really skeptical when it came to intimacy and vulnerability. Another example for some women is that maybe they developed this very theatrical personality with their dad to try to get his attention. And they still find themselves playing that out with men now, where they see themselves always needing to prove something, trying really hard to impress men, trying really hard to really get that attention out of men. Maybe you felt like you had to give up your boundaries for your dad. So now as an adult, you find yourself doing the same thing with men, maybe not having boundaries, not speaking up for yourself, allowing your space or your body or your emotions to be violated by men, letting people use you, maybe becoming really codependent. Another example from my own personal journey was how my dad was really good at empty promises. So, he was good at promising the world, but yet never following through on much. And then I noticed, like in my teenage years and my early 20s, I was attracted to men who did the same thing because that's what felt like love to me, until I learned how to heal that part of myself and heal and, rewire that inner story within me. Love to me felt like waiting around for a man. Love to me felt like being uncertain and having that lack of clarity. All of that felt normal for me until I learned how to heal and rewire that inner story. So healing the father wound is all about getting yourself out of that false narrative, out of that false programming that was implanted within you about men and about your dad, and then learning how to allow your own inner warrior to awaken and take over. So that inner warrior within you represents that healthy, grounding, masculine energy within you. And that's the part of you that's going to help you feel more secure, feel stronger, and feel more of that courage that you've been looking for. And, it's all about illuminating your soul and learning how to show up for yourself, learning how to show up for your inner world in a different way. And that's going to help you transcend and elevate out of that wound, out of that father wound, and out of that wounded girl energy that's still waiting on her dad's approval. And when you do that, that's going to help you embody your inner woman. So the inner woman is the part of you, that's the wise part of you, that's the mature part of you, that's the real part of you. And that's the part of you that is fully worthy of devotion, of the kind of devotion and love that you really want. And when you really feel that, when you really own that, when you really activate that, that's when you see yourself attracted to different kinds of men. That's when you see yourself attracting different kinds of men into your life. That's when you start feeling yourself become more grounded and more liberated and more secure. The more you melt away and release and heal all of that anxious energy that's looking for that external validation. When you learn how to self-source your own magic and kind of fill yourself up, that's when you start to feel yourself be more liberated, more relaxed, and feeling more strong and confident in who you are. So again, if you do want to join the temple and heal your father wound, then I'm going to leave the link to the details of the program down below in the comments. You can click on that if you want to see all the details of everything. And then you can send me a private message if you want to proceed with the registration, because there's only 8 spots that are left, and we do start next month on February 27th. So I highly recommend to act now and to register today so you can save your spot so you don't miss out. Okay, ladies, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. As always, I want to hear your feedback. So if you do have any questions or comments or insights, you can leave that down below, and I'd love to answer anything for you. Thank you for joining. I love you all, and I hope you have a good night. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.